question they should ask themselves, well, did these take it out? Or did the manuscripts used for the King James Version add it? 1 John 5:7. The evidence is that it was added. He couldn't find a single Greek manuscript that had 1 John 5:7. It was just in the Latin ones. And the Catholic Church was pressuring him to put it in there. Finally, he said, look, if you can give me one Greek manuscript that has it in there, I'll include it. Lo and behold, one surfaced. And so true to his word, Erasmus included it, but then he put a footnote and he said, this reading is not in all the other manuscripts. So it shouldn't be in there. It just shouldn't be in there. And there were a number of instances, at least in the New Testament, where that is the case. And so I think the modern translations are right in leaving these things out. Yom Kippur was that there were two goats, and one was led outside the city and freed, and the other was slain inside the city. The problem with that analogy is just the opposite is happening here. You have Barabbas, who is released inside the city, and then Jesus is escorted outside the city where he's slain. So you would think that if this is just being made up, it wouldn't be the exact opposite here. So I would reject that analogy. If Jesus rose from the dead, it's game, set, match. Christianity's true, period, right?
Yeah.
But if he didn't, Paul said, if Christ was not raised, we're not going to be raised. If we're not going to be raised, the Christian life isn't worth living. Let's eat and drink, for tomorrow we die.
Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And today I'm joined by Dr. Mike Licona, one of my favorite, I agree with Paula Gia, one of my favorite Christian scholars. You're right up there with Dale C. Ellison. And I get to talk to you and him within the same month, which is awesome, which is mind-blowing. Two great scholars of our time. So let's get right to it. You have a debate coming up with Bart Ehrman. This is juicy. Tell us about this a little bit. Tell us about this.
Well, thanks, Neil. And thanks for your kind words. I mean, especially mentioning me in the same line as Dale Allison. He's just, I have so much admiration for him. He's just amazing. So, but thank you for your kind words. So, Bart and I have debated 6 times already. We've debated twice on the historical reliability of the Gospels. We've debated 3 times on the resurrection of Jesus, once on, wasn't so much a debate, but a dialogue with Justin Brierley on, why I'm a Christian and why he's not a Christian. So what makes this one, and we've become friends over the years, we have strong disagreements, but I think we respect one another. I certainly respect him. And what makes this debate different is, whereas most debates are going to be 2 to 2.5 hours, this one is an all-day event. So, we're going to have plenty of time to share more evidence than we for our positions, or more arguments for our position than we have in the past. More time to give rebuttals of the other person's position. More time for audience Q&A. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I expect for it to be somewhat of a spirited debate, as they always are with Bart. You know how Bart is, and he's just a great guy, and he's really passionate about what he does. So to be a spirited debate, but it will be a fun debate, and probably the most informed debate that we have had. So that's why I think we have said in an intro video that it is the debate to end all debates between the two of us on this topic. So it'd be fun.
I'm excited for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So there's a link in the description for everybody. Go sign up. You're helping me out. So, I appreciate that if you do sign up. And let's get right to some questions. So my question has to do with the Passover narrative in the Gospels, where Pilate brings out 2 prisoners, and then the authors of the Gospels say that it is a custom of the Jews to bring out 2 prisoners on Passover. So I can't. I'm not like a scholar like you, but as far as I can, as far as the digging I've had, I couldn't really find any other examples of this happening. It's not in the Old Testament. It's not in the Talmud. But that being said, I do notice that there is a pattern in the Gospels with these sort of like allegories happening where Jesus is like portrayed as like a new version of somebody. Like, for example, Joseph getting sold for 20 shekels, Jesus getting sold for 30 shekels. And this particular narrative sounds like a Yom Kippur where they take out two goats, free one and let one go. But this is also on Passover, so it's a little confusing. I'm rambling now. My question is, where do you is there first of all, is there any other sources for this being a real custom? Or if not, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's interesting stuff you raised, Neil. So first, I'd have to look at the text, but I don't think it says it was a custom of the Jews. I think it says it was Pilate's custom.
Hey guys, I don't normally do this because he's not here to, defend himself. I'm just doing a commentary on a current conversation. But I do need to clear something up here because as I showed you, John 18 clearly shows that Pontius Pilate is saying that this is the Jews' customs, coming right from his own mouth. But Dr. Licona is not wrong because in Mark and in Matthew, it does say that this was Pilate's custom. Mark says Pilate's custom. Matthew says it is the custom of the governor, who is Pilate. Luke says it's a necessity, so that's kind of neutral, I guess. I'm not sure what that means. And John says from Pilate's own lips that it's the Jews' custom. I guess the only thing we can really conclude here is that there's a contradiction between the four Gospels. But he's not wrong, so that's where I'll leave it at.
To do this, okay.
Interesting.
So let's talk about that in just a moment, but let's go to the Yom Kippur thing. So the Yom Kippur was that there were two goats, and one was led outside the city and freed, and the other was slain inside the city. The problem with that analogy is just the opposite is happening here. You have Barabbas, who is released inside the city, and then Jesus is escorted outside the city where he's slain. So you would think that if this is just being made up, it wouldn't be the exact opposite here. So I would reject that analogy. Second, it is multiply attested in independent sources. So generally, scholars think that Matthew and Luke use Mark as their primary source and supplement it. Okay. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have extra sources for some of the things they use with Mark, but if they do, sometimes you can't tell. And I'm looking at what we can actually prove. We can look at possibilities, but I'm looking what we can state with great confidence. So you at least have Mark here, and then you have John. And the majority of critical New Testament scholars today, who are specialists in John, they think that, and I've just checked this out recently with two Johannine specialists, who one of which has devoted his life and career in and just swims in John's gospel. And they have both told me that the majority of critical New Testament scholars today think that even though they reject the traditional authorship of John's gospel, namely that John, the son of Zebedee, was its author, they do think that the author was, that the beloved disciple, whom they would say was a minor disciple of Jesus, but no less an eyewitness who had been with Jesus and traveled with him, that the beloved disciple was either the author or served as the source for the large majority of the content in that gospel. So, whereas the Gospel of John, scholars debate on whether John, the author, was familiar with Mark, the majority still think that John is writing independently of Mark. So he might have known of Mark's gospel, but he's still providing independent testimony. So we do have multiple independent sources in Mark and John, at least when it comes to the gospel sources on this story about Barabbas and Jesus. Now, are there any other things that would suggest as well? Josephus does mention that Albinus, who was the Roman governor of Judea, the very same position that Pontius Pilate had had just 30 years earlier, that in the year 64, just prior to leaving office, Albinus executed the worst of prisoners and released all the rest in order to please the Jews. And in all, we have testimonies from 4 Roman rulers and a Herodian prince who would release prisoners to the Jews in order to appease them. So, since we have multiple independent sources with Mark and John that testify that this was a um, a tradition or of Pilate,
That's
I
interesting.
think we've got reason to think that it's authentic.
That's interesting that you put it that way, because now that if it's Pilate's idea, that makes more sense because Pilate can do what he wants. He has the power. The
Mhm.
Jews aren't going to be like, oh, we're going to do our thing. We're going to do this new fake allegory custom of Yom Kippur on Passover, which is confusing. But the way you said it makes a lot more sense. If it's Pilate doing this, then now we're talking the plausibility here, especially what you mentioned about Albinus. I did not know that. That's interesting. So to sort of steel man for you, I do this a lot when I talk to people. I try to get on the same level as them. Sort of steel man for me. So Pontius Pilate could be getting ideas from Yom Kippur and saying, "Oh, they like to let one go and free one. Maybe I'll do that with the prisoners. Maybe that'll get them to like me or something." Something like that. That could have been like sort of how it happened. Um, but yeah, that's a good
But then
point.
why do the opposite?
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It would make more sense that Pontius Pilate is doing it, not the Jews, who they would follow it to a T. They would do it right. Pontius Pilate is just he's just some guy who just a pagan. So that I can understand where you're coming from with that. My other question was completely different than this. It's way off. It's about the King James Bible. It's the King James only argument. Their charge against the other Bibles, I guess they call them the modern Bibles, even though King James kind of is a modern Bible, but whatever. Their charge against the newer Bibles are that they take Lucifer out of the Old Testament in Isaiah 14, and they take out 1 John 5:7 in the epistles. What do you're the scholar, so what would you respond to that for people who say that?
Well, the question they should ask themselves, well, did these take it out, or did the manuscripts used for the King James version, did it add it? And for the New Testament, I'm not familiar with the one in the Old Testament, but the one for the New Testament, 1 John 5:7, the evidence is that it was added. In fact, we know why it was added. Bruce Metzger mentions this in his commentary on the textual criticism of the New Testament. And he says that if I remember right on here, it's been years since I've looked at this, but it seems that he couldn't find a single Greek manuscript that had 1 John 5:7. It was just in the Latin ones, and the Catholic Church was pressuring him to put it in there. And finally, he said, "Look, if you can give me one Greek manuscript that has it in there, I'll include it." And lo and behold, one surfaced. And so, true to his word, Erasmus included it, but then he put a footnote and he said, "This reading is not in all the other manuscripts." Um,
Yeah.
so it seems like it was added in as a gloss by a scribe later on. So it shouldn't be in there. It just shouldn't be in there. And there are a number of instances, at least in the New Testament, where that is the case. And so I think the modern translations are right in leaving these things out.
And so what's the before this is the 13th century amount, or is this 14th century when Erasmus is making the Textus Receptus?
I think it's 14th century.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned,
Or
there's
wait a
no.
minute. I think it's I think it's 16th century.
Oh, okay. So it's
I
way
think
okay.
it's because the King James was early 17th century,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
Erasmus, I think, was in the previous century, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, either way, we're in the medieval times now.
Yeah.
So you're saying that before that, there are no examples of any manuscripts that have that
Any
additional
Greek manuscripts.
Greek manuscript. So
Yeah,
this is just in the Latin?
that's correct. As far as I know. I mean,
Oh, I
that's
see.
yeah, it's been years since I've looked at it, but that was the reason that Erasmus wanted to exclude 1 John 5:7.
Okay. All right. Now we're getting somewhere.
Mhm.
And the Lucifer thing. this is from also in the Latin Bibles, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I can't comment on that because I'm not an Old Testament guy, and I just haven't really
Sure.
studied it with that.
Sure. I think that might be it. And yeah, oh yeah, that's the next thing I want to talk about. And so just to also remind everybody, even though we just talked about it, your debate with Bart Ehrman is coming up on did the resurrection happen? Getting right to the big argument. And
Yeah, I mean, if Jesus rose from the dead, it's game, set, match. Christianity's true, period, right?
yeah,
But if he didn't, Paul said, if Christ was not raised, we're not going to be raised. If we're not going to be raised, the Christian life isn't worth living. Let's eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. So this is important topic.
yeah. And like I said, the link's in the description. Sign up. You'll be helping out me, and you'll be not only doing that, you'll be watching one of the debates of our time on the biggest topic. I think this is the biggest topic. This is my whole channel revolves around Christianity, early Christianity, origins, Old Testament, New Testament. So yeah, people who watch me will probably be signing up. So
great, Neil. It's been just wonderful being with you and meeting you, man.
Definitely, likewise. It's been awesome. And you have just attained true gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has no power over you.